It's one thing when you're an immigrant. It's a total other thing when you're a refugee.
And you come to this country. So what's it like? We're about to find out. And this is Chick to Chick. Happy New Year, everyone. The Chicks are back. We took a little break there over the holidays just to rest and spend time with family. But now we're back, and it is 2022. How bizarre to be saying that. But we're so glad to be back, and we have a great podcast to kick off the new year with.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I've read this book called Saigon by Phuc Tran a little while ago in the fall, and actually it's more like the summertime. And I know of Phuc because we went to the same high school. We actually went to the same elementary school, same middle school, but I didn't know Phuc. But yet I thought I knew Phuc. And this is because his family came here from Vietnam. And I found his story incredibly, jarring at sometimes, heartwarming at others. And I thought this has got to be something we should talk about because he talks a lot about the difficulties when you're a refugee and you're trying to assimilate.
Well, it's really difficult. My parents came to this country as immigrants. They wanted to come here. They wanted to start a new life. And I'm sure that he is in the same situation, but it's got to be a completely different thing coming here as an immigrant versus coming here as a refugee.
Yeah, so we're going to talk with him. So right now joining us is Phuc Tran. Hey, thank you so much for being on Chick to Chick. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Okay,
Hi.
So right out of the gate, I want you to tee up this book because only you can colorfully give the best description of what Saigon is about.
Oh, gosh. So I would say it's in some ways it's a classic coming of age story, but it's my story, obviously. So maybe my story doesn't sound like other people's stories. I grew up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania as, the only Vietnamese refugee kid and family for as far as we could see. And it was in the 80s. And that went really smoothly, as you can imagine. So that's what my book was about.
Yeah.
So
and it's also about, sort of surviving like the dysfunction of my family and sort of, 80s Pennsylvania.
Hey, don't feel bad. We all have dysfunction in our families. Every single one of us.
Absolutely.
So let's go back to the beginning. How old were you when you came here? And talk to us about what that was like.
So I was 1.5, not even 2, when my family came to the U.S. and we were relocated to Fort Indian Town Gap, where I think maybe 30-ish thousand Vietnamese families were relocated, and then from there we were sponsored by some nice Lutherans in Carlisle, Bill Hook and his family, and I think many of them are still around Carlisle, and so they were our sponsors and sort of helped my family of, 12, sort of figure out America. And that's how we ended up in Carlisle.
Yeah. So it was really interesting to read because I could place the location, I could place everything. But I think what people who will read it and don't know exactly where you lived, they're going to come away with it in the dynamic of the family relationship that you had. So not only is your entire family displaced, but talk to us about, because this is part of your coming of age kind of, is how the dynamic was within your family.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everyone in my family was, experiencing some form of, I think, PTSD. I am no psychologist or, psychiatrist, so, I can't really armchair diagnose my family. But I think, going through a civil war and then the collapse of your country and coming here, not speaking any English, doesn't seem like an easy time for anyone. And then having to leave family members behind, and then moving to Carlisle. I think it was just really difficult for them. And I think on top of that, you've got, you have like the language barrier, you have like a cultural gap, and then all of a sudden all the young kids in the family are growing up in the US and they're fully Americanized. So now you have, like yet another barrier for communication between sort of my generation and then my parents' generation. So I think it was really challenging.
So it's challenging, I think, for any child growing up and going through school and maturing and whatnot, but it's completely different for you. What was that like? And what were some of the challenges that you faced going to high school with someone like that
Thanks. The cheerleader, which when you read
Oh,
the
is
book,
she really like that?
right? No.
Seriously, what was it like for you?
I hear that, Flora, and I think that for me, like the really illuminating thing was, so one of the sort of big pillars of my book is my discovery of punk rock and how that really helped me find my tribe. And so I think like on the surface, like I looked at my skateboard and punk rock friends and they were just like all like middle class white kids, but they had the same sort of like disconnect with their parents that I had. And maybe even more profoundly, we didn't really talk about it, but that was really comforting to me. And I think you're right. It's like growing up as a teenager is hard anyway. Right. And I think that that's what we really connected with. So I'm not quick to write off. Like, I think wrongly so. Like I assumed like, oh, well, if you were just like a regular old white kid, it was so much easier for you. And that's definitely not the case. Right. So I just had a special brand of, sort of difficult upbringing or, difficult adolescence, but I think everybody does.
So that helped you then feel some sort of a connection when you said you got into punk rock.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in the process of writing the book, I think like what's been really illuminating is hearing from fellow classmates, from my graduating year who reached out to me and just sort of let me know that they were going through things too when we were in high school that I had no idea about, and I think for me, like, I think it really underscores how little we know about each other's stories and how we make big assumptions about like what people are going through. Like I had a fellow classmate who, sort of reached out to me and said, I was closeted and gay all through high school. And I mean, I didn't know gay kids till I got to college, like, it was just not a safe time to be, out in Carlisle in the 80s and the 90s. So that was really eye-opening for me.
Yeah, that is very, very true. So one of the other things I love about your book is the way in which you compartmentalize in your storytelling using literature. So I know that you were a smart guy. You just didn't feel comfortable exposing your smartness, so to speak. And you had someone who was actually from my class. Phuc and I are just a year apart. And this guy who was the punk rocker, right? The skater dude, he had the highest, what is that called? The, help me out here. The mohawk. My gosh. He had the highest
She's
mohawk.
She's going like this. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
They can't, for the podcast, yes. They have no idea what I'm doing above my head. He had the highest mohawk I've ever seen in my life. But he is someone who's sort of brought you out of your shell in terms of enjoying literature. And I love that you took this love of literature and you told your story through the eyes of certain characters. So talk to us about why you chose to do it that way. I thought it was brilliant.
Oh, thanks. I mean, it was, I really read books to, not feel so alone. Like I remember reading Scarlet Letter and reading about Hester Prynne being exiled. And I was like, this book is for me. Like, it's so like, it really spoke to me in such a profound way, and the flip side is even if the book wasn't intended for me, it felt so, sort of revolutionary for me to sort of crash this party to which I was clearly not invited. And it just felt really subversive. So, and I didn't really discover therapy, until much later in my life, in my 30s. So, I mean, this is like a teenager's version of like, sort of like poor man's therapy, right? Like just reading books and like crying and being like, you get me, Nathaniel Hawthorne, you really get me.
But I thought that's what girls did, because I thought that that's what girls did. We threw ourselves in these books and, we either romanticized about things or, we could feel the pain of the character, help draw out ours. But it really did move you through different stages of your life growing up, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I would have done. I mean, I couldn't talk to my parents. I couldn't talk to my friends. And I mean, I think when you feel like you're just going through this stuff alone, like you're just, it's like any port in a storm, right? I remember reading Judy Blume in late elementary school and wishing that there were like a Judy Blume for like Vietnamese boys, and it's like, I mean,
dear God, it's me, Phuc, right?
Yeah, no, 1,000%. But like, there's not. So like, you do what you can, right? So you read, Mark Twain, and you read, Nathaniel Hawthorne, or Kafka, right? Like any normal kid.
So, at the end of the day, here, what is your message to others, what do you want people to know? I don't want to compare myself to you, but, kids are cruel. And my parents were Italian immigrants, and we were picked on, my brothers and I, and we were called derogatory names because we were Italian. And you, of course, are coming at it from a completely different world, being a refugee. And I'm sure that kids were cruel and mean to you as well because of your cultural differences. And to you, you're like, what's the big deal? Because I didn't understand so we're Italian, so what? What is your message? What do you want people to know? And what do you want to tell them?
Yeah, I hope if people only get one thing from the book, it's that like we're really complicated people, that there are so many sort of like multiple identities that we have sort of operating at any given point. And that's true for ourselves, and that's true for everybody that we encounter. And I hope that if they read my book and they can approach themselves and the people in their lives, especially strangers, with some empathy, I think that's not going to make the world a worse place, I think.
That's a big word, empathy. It's a big word.
Well, I am so happy that you came on our podcast today. I was so excited from the very beginning of reading your book. I said to Flora, we have to have him on. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
For writing this memoir, Phuc, because I think that so many people will garner something from it. And so I'm hoping they'll get out and pick it up. And thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Carrie, and thanks, Flora. And Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
I'm telling you, you just got to delve into this book.
He had to deal with you?
No, not really, not really. But as Phuc said, people need to have more empathy. Mm-hmm. No one knows what's going on.
Nope.
And when you're coming here from another country, whether you wanted to or you're forced to, it's a whole different gamut of things going on. And I just love the way that he does the storytelling about his life.
You know what? Different is not a bad thing. If someone's different from you, that's not bad.
Yep.
Embrace it, learn from it, grow from it. And you know what? It's a new year. Can't we all just be kind and get along?
Yes, we absolutely can. We appreciate you being here. And we hope that you will come back when we are chirping about another topic.